and welcome into One Jets Live. I'm Caroline Hendershot alongside Eric Allen. We're coming to you live from One Jets Drive, and we're bringing you all of the free agency updates as soon as we get them. So we're going to continue to do this throughout free agency, so make sure you stay close to your computer or your phone. As soon as we go live, you're going to be hearing from us with all of the updates. And EA, I think we should just jump right into it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Joe Douglas, been a busy 24 hours for him. The negotiation period has opened here 52 hours before the official start of free agency at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. But Joe D getting some moves done here in the early going.
Yep, and some of those moves include, so yesterday the Jets agreed to terms with Chuck Clark, who missed the 2023 season with the Jets after suffering a torn ACL during OTAs and is back with a one-year deal per Adam Schefter. Then they also agreed to terms with cornerback Isaiah Oliver from the 49ers, a one-year deal per Mike Garafolo. And the Jets got tight end Kenny Yeboah, who was a restricted free agent, coming back on another one-year deal per Peter Schrager. So what do you think of those acquisitions so far, EA?
We are constantly adding to that tracker on NewYorkJets.com, so you'll be able to see that here throughout free agency. Again, nothing official in terms of these guys signing contracts as far as we know at this point, but Chuck Clark is the guy who stands out. He's the headliner of those three because he's the guy that Douglas acquired via trade last year, and he was coming off a career high 101 tackles for the Ravens, and he's got experience playing all over the secondary. And when you looked at the Jets entering free agency, they had three unrestricted free agents potentially in the aforementioned Chuck Clark, Ashton Davis, Jordan Whitehead. Of course, now you have three safeties on the roster. Tony Adams, of course, playing that free safety position, but Chuck Clark, maybe you pencil him in at starting strong safety. We'll have to see what happens with Whitehead and Ashton Davis, but here's a guy who's a heady ball player. It was very productive in Baltimore. In fact, after they drafted Kyle Hamilton, Chuck Clark didn't come off the field. So again, ACL last year, he'll have the opportunity to get back out there with the Jets here in 2024.
And he was really strong before that, had an Ironman streak of over 1,000 snaps. So that injury last year was really unfortunate, but I think people are really excited to see Chuck Clark get back in that lineup. Also, just a reminder, if you have any comments, questions, make sure you put them in the chat. We'll get to those as soon as we're done recapping all of the news. But again, earlier today, we got another agreeing to terms with kicker Greg Zuerlein. The Jets are re-signing kicker Greg Zuerlein to a 2-year deal per Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport. So Greg the Leg is going to be back. How exciting is that?
It's huge because he just had the best kicking season in franchise history. 35 of 38, including a franchise record, 26 consecutive field goals. He was also 5 of 6 from 50-plus yards. So Legatron, Greg the Leg, a great leg strength, and he was so accurate last year. Now with Aaron Rodgers back in the lineup, the Jets are going to have more opportunities to score the football, and he can be a difference between winning and losing down the stretch. Remember, this team last year, 7-10, okay? Now if you're playing in close games, you got Aaron Rodgers and you got a field goal kicker like Greg the Leg. That's huge. Now, the guy that we're also going to be watching is there going to be any news on the front of Thomas Morstead, his kicking buddy, who had a tremendous year himself at the punting position. So you'd love to have both of those guys back in the fold.
Right. And, of course, Morstead would be a huge addition as well to come back. But Greg is such a consistent piece to that kicking squad because from 2019 to 2021, the Jets used 7 different kickers. And so Greg has been that constant, consistent force back there and has been able to do it from way far out. So he's a great addition to have back. What do you think about other positions of need that the Jets obviously are in need of? We've got O-line, wide receiver. Where do you think the Jets are going to go with those two groups? Do you think they're going to attack through free agency?
Offensive line, you're definitely going to attack in free agency, and you're probably going to attack in the draft as well. Receiver, you could add another complement to Garrett Wilson. The Jets have been vocal about adding a veteran quarterback. They've given Zach Wilson and his team permission to seek a trade, so we'll have to see how that unfolds here early in free agency. On the defensive side of the ball, we talk about safety. The Jets are probably not done at safety here, whether that be free agency or the draft. Again, we're going to have to watch what happens with Whitehead, who had 4 interceptions last season. Ashton Davis was a ball magnet. He had 3 interceptions and 3 fumble recoveries himself last year. And then the big name, of course, of the Jets' 19 unrestricted free agents at this point is Bryce Huff. What is going to happen with Bryce Huff? Ideally, Joe Douglas said, we'd like to have Huff back with us. But again, the Jets did not place the franchise tag on him, which would have been in about the $21 million range. So does edge become not at the front of the list, but you might have to add depth there if Huff goes elsewhere. Also, the couple other positions, running back and tight end, but the Jets added a depth piece again in Kenny Yeboah. And Yeboah is a guy who's going to help you on special teams. That's the early flavor here. I'm getting a special teams feel because you got Greg Zuerlein back, Kenny Yeboah back, in the Jets also added a former San Francisco 49ers defensive back that should soon become official as well.
Yes, 100%. Now, there was also another tweet out there per Adam Schefter about a wide receiver by the name of T. Higgins, and he has requested a trade from the Bengals, who franchise tagged him earlier this offseason. And as Schefter said, Higgins loves Cincinnati and hoped to be with the team long term, but is disappointed that the team has not talked about a contract extension. So what do you think? What do you make of that?
I think he's a huge name. I think that anytime a guy like that potentially is going to be on the market, he's going to get a lot of interest. Now, where does Cincinnati stand in this situation? Because he's requesting a trade right now. They got the tag on him. Higgins, listen, he's a big-time weapon, and the Bengals here have to figure out what they're going to do moving forward. What I would ask Jets fans right now as we start the negotiation window is, what do they want the Jets to do at the receiver position? I think automatically next year, Allen Lazard is going to be a more productive player when you pair him up with Aaron Rodgers again. We saw Xavier Gibson and Jason Brownlee take some steps as undrafted free agents who came in and got valuable playing time last season. You know you had the big dog and Garrett Wilson, but you're sitting there with the 10th overall selection. So it's interesting as we watch what happens in Cincinnati with T. Higgins, what's going to happen elsewhere as this negotiation window has opened up for teams and agents, because there are other guys on the market like Calvin Ridley of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's out there. He might be at the top of the list right now because you have a guy like Mike Evans, who never hit the market. He resigned with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Michael Pittman, it was just reported this morning, actually, after the Colts intended to give him the franchise tag, they reached a long-term deal with him. Quincy Enunwa, on our recent free agency preview, was looking at guys like Darnell Mooney and also Marquise Hollywood Brown as well. So those are guys who are going to be probably at the top of this market.
Yeah, there's a lot of options in free agency for that wide receiver position. Now, also, make sure you guys are coming at us with some questions, some comments. We'll get to those as well. Also, what about the wide receivers and O-line, because that's a big need for the Jets, that are coming through the draft?
Yeah, that's the bottom line here. The Jets got some good news on Friday, the 3 compensatory selections. So now, as opposed to going into the 2024 draft with 5 selections, you have 8, 1 in the 6th round, 2 in the 7th round, including Mr. Irrelevant. That worked out for the San Francisco 49ers a couple years back when they drafted a guy by the name of Brock Purdy. But with that being said, you're at 10 overall, so we have to see how free agency shakes out. I feel bad for these guys making these draft predictions because we don't know what's going to happen here in free agency. But the Jets, they want to see a run on quarterbacks early because that means that tackle pool and the wide receiver pool is going to be that much more appealing for this team.
Yes, 100%. Chase actually wants to know, would you go wide receiver or O-line at number 10?
Man, like I said, that's so early. I'd lean towards offensive line.
I would as well.
At this point, again, Joe Alt, likely to be a top 10 selection. Now, does he
sure.
fall? Is there a possibility that he falls? Is he an attractive? Is he so attractive that Joe D says, I got to move up and get him? You have Fashanu from Penn State, of course. Fuaga from Oregon State. He had a very good Senior Bowl down there in Mobile, Alabama. There are other guys along the line who could be in the first round as well, like Guyton and Mims, and the list goes on and on.
Now, Andrew also commented about, what do you think about Robert Hunt? How would you
listen, we just did this for our taping for the free agency preview show. I think he's really attractive because Hunt is a guy who's got some position flex. He's 26 years old. He's a mauler in the run game. We saw Breece Hall have such a fantastic year in 2023. Breece Hall is only going to get better in 2024 because against Aaron Rodgers, you can't constantly load the box. Let's face it, last year the Jets struggled to throw the football through the air. With Rodgers back in the lineup, that's not going to happen. I like Hunt because also there's some system familiarity because he played for Mike McDaniel there with the Dolphins as well in that zone blocking scheme. So I think he'd be an attractive piece if the Jets were able to go out and say, okay, we're interested in you, and maybe if the numbers matched.
Now, I like the offensive line from both free agency and the draft because with the draft, you need someone who's going to be a day one starter, right? But there's 3 positions of need, really, because you're getting back, for sure, Joe Tippmann and Elijah Vera Tucker, right? And Elijah Vera Tucker has had some injuries over the last 2 seasons, but that's because he's been moved around on that line. So he's probably going to find a home on the line. And then you're still looking at 3 other positions. So you maybe get 2 through free agency, 1 through the draft, you think?
Yeah, and you just mentioned Elijah Vera Tucker. The Jets have reiterated throughout the offseason they want to find a permanent home for him. I'm wondering what this is ultimately going to look like as far as after free agency. That will probably provide us some further insight on where AVT is actually going to be. But it's so valuable to have that chess piece. And then you like what Joe Tippmann gave you last year. Talk about position flexibility. Most people, after he came out of Wisconsin, were thinking the 6'6" big dude is going to stay at center. But he actually started the year at right guard. And then when Connor McGovern went down, McGovern, obviously an unrestricted free agent himself right now, he shifted it over to center, and he played very well for you. So hey, listen, you got those 2 pieces up front. The other guys we should mention, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention them, Wes Schweitzer, and also tackles, the young tackles in Max Mitchell and Carter Warren. Carter Warren got valuable starting experience down the stretch. Maybe, potentially, he becomes a swing tackle for you.
Right, 100%. Now, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. Running back. You got to have that depth at running back. Where did the Jets do you think that they go through free agency with that?
I think you could get a veteran, but I think you can get a veteran where the price point is very favorable because let's face it, right now you have Breece Hall, and he is your bell cow, and you also like what Israel Abanikanda showed you down the stretch. So Izzy is a young guy, gives you some kind of explosion. So I do think you can get a veteran running back, but I don't think that is at the top of your needs list.
Right.
And I think that's going to be something that Joe Douglas and his personnel staff can navigate down the line.
Now, I know we're kind of running through all of the positions, but that backup quarterback position is interesting just because they're allowing Zach Wilson to seek a trade through his agent. That was reported a couple weeks ago. Where do the Jets kind of go? What direction do you see them going in with a backup quarterback?
Well, there are a few veterans that probably pop out the most right now, and they're probably starting right with Ryan Tannehill, okay, and also Jacoby Brissett. Brissett is a guy the Jets actually faced the last couple seasons. Was impressive in each of those ball games. He started for Cleveland. He came off the bench last year, Christmas Eve, against the Jets, and he really put a scare into them, being the commander of the Commanders. But Tannehill is also very familiar with the staff as well. When you look at the Jets coaching staff, a lot of former Titans coaches here at One Jets Drive. So those are the guys at the top of the list. How about Tyrod Taylor, a guy who formerly played in the division, of course, with the Buffalo Bills, played crosstown last year with the Giants, of course. He's another guy who's going to get some interest out there in the market. So, again, it's going to be very interesting. And also, it's always intriguing to see what the price point is and who's going to be the first guy. I would anticipate it's either going to be Brissett or Tannehill in as far as who goes first out there in free agency, and then maybe the dominoes fall after that.
I just saw a comment from Robert S. If Malik Neighbors falls to 10, you have to take him, right? Like, obviously.
Listen, he's very explosive, man. He's a tantalizing player who paired up with Jaden Daniels last year. Jaden Daniels could go as high as 2 in the draft right now, we're talking about. If you're thinking that, hey, Caleb Williams goes number 1 overall, we'll have to see what happens with Justin Fields. But Neighbors, dynamite. He's dynamite. But also, those other 2 guys at the top of the draft are dynamite as well when you're talking about Marvin Harrison.
Oh, yeah.
I know you might not be happy us talking about the Ohio State University, Caroline Huntershot, a Michigan alum here. And Rome Odunze from Washington, man. A big-bodied receiver. Won a lot of battles on the outside last year. Michael Penix's favorite target.
Yeah.
So each of those guys are going to be very interesting. And if they're on the board at 10, I wonder if it ever gets down to, hey, who are the Jets going to take? Are they going to take the receiver? Are they going to take the tackle?
Now, what do you think about how just the Jets are going to look next year in general? They're going to be playing a couple West Coast games against the Cardinals, against the 49ers. How do you think that this team is going to shape up? I know that they have to fill those holes on the offensive line.
Yep.
They need another wide receiver. But Aaron Rodgers should be back kind of in full swing. What do you think that their season and their scheme should really look like next season?
Well, we're really going to see what this offense looks like with Aaron Rodgers under center. I mean, listen, nobody anticipated that he goes down 4 snaps in the season. The Jets still did finish 7-10, and listen, you should not be crowning them for winning 7 games. With that being said, if Patrick Mahomes went down 4 snaps in the season, I don't know what the Kansas City Chiefs are. If Josh Allen goes down 4 snaps into the season, I don't know what the Buffalo Bills are. So, again, it's all about end pieces offensively, I think, for the Jets, and then tinkering defensively. Now, Bryce Huff, again, is the guy, the headliner of the 19 unrestricted free agents with Greg Zuerlein coming back and also Chuck Clark coming back. And what's going to happen with him, because right now you have a lot of depth at the defensive end position. But listen, Aaron Rodgers, he makes this organization, he makes this team look completely different, bottom line. But you have to start with the emphasis up front along that offensive line, and then also helping them out with some more weapons. But you do have weapons here. It's not like the Jets are void of weapons in the cupboard. They have Garrett Wilson. They have Breece Hall. They have Tyler Conklin, who had 61 catches last year, career high, despite playing with 4 different quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I think something else to keep in mind is they have all those weapons. All of those weapons really performed, like you said. No matter the circumstance, they were resilient and kept working through it. So I think that's just something to keep in mind. What about Brock Bowers if he falls to 10?
You have to determine whether he is a unicorn. Now, if Bowers is your guy, I put him in the category of, okay, offensive playmaker. Again, could you go in that direction? Yes. Now, when you look at the Jets, prior to free agency, remember, they released C.J. Uzomah, the veteran tight end, also Lincoln Tomlinson as well to free up some cap space. So Tyler Conklin is the guy up top. Then you have Jeremy Ruckert, and you bring Yeboah back into the fold. Yeboah is a guy who's an athletic tight end, but he also can help you a lot on special teams. I don't know, because it's hard for me to say yes or no because I'd go back to who's on the board when Bowers is on the board.
Right, exactly.
But, hey, listen, Aaron Rodgers likes throwing to the tight end. But, oh, by the way, Aaron Rodgers likes throwing the ball to everybody.
Yeah, he does. He's pretty good at that, some would say. Now, I just want to bring this up real quickly. Ian Rappaport just tweeted out that the Bears are expected to sign former Eagles starting running back DeAndre Swift as their new starting running back, per him and Mike Garafolo. He gets a 3-year deal. So, another running back.
It feels like there's been a lot of chatter of late about Saquon Barkley, who is going to be a free agent going to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what happens with that. So Swift ends up in Chicago.
Chicago.
That's the first name here. What time is it? It's
12:20.
12:20. So, again, throughout the day, you're going to hear more and more reports as far as agreement in terms, and then these guys officially will sign their contracts 4 p.m. Wednesday. But the Bears, it all starts with them as far as the draft is concerned, but because what are they doing with Justin Fields, and are they definitely taking Caleb Williams? I thought in Indianapolis, the vibe was most people you talk to think that the Bears ultimately will end up taking Caleb Williams. But then what is the market for Justin Fields? And then we can take it a step further and say Kirk Cousins is out there. Now, Kirk Cousins, does he return to Minnesota?
Right, that's the big question.
Does Atlanta, who is in the market for a quarterback, do they make a big play here for Cousins? We'll just see how that all
Yeah, one of the big
place.
reports out there is that it's kind of in Kirk Cousins' corner now, like what he does, and that will affect the rest of the market and how everything else kind of.
Yeah, and he's 36 coming off an Achilles. A similar situation just as far as the injuries and age, as far as what Aaron Rodgers is trying to do, 40 coming off the Achilles.
Now, I want to go back to, you just said the vibe at in Indianapolis. I want to kind of talk about, you were at the Combine. What was the vibe of that offensive line class? Because I think that's obviously going to be a focus for the Jets. If they don't get those acquisitions through free agency, you're going to be looking at the offensive line class.
Yeah, it's an awesome question. My sense is that if you're going to get a tackle, you can't wait, meaning you got to get one in the first round. Because you could see as many as 6 or 7 tackles go in the first round. The Jets don't have a second-round pick. Whereas at the receiver position, my sense was you have these potential stars at the top in Rome and Neighbors and Harrison, but there is a lot of depth in this draft, and we've seen it from teams of late where late, middle rounds, guys coming in as rookies having instant success, whether that be Tank Dell in Houston or St. Brown in Detroit. So we've seen that. And again, this class has a lot of depth. So right now the Jets are sitting there at 10, but they do have a 3rd-round pick. I think if it comes down to whether you go and tackle or receiver, a lot of people would tell you you might have to go tackle and then come back at receiver. Again, we're going to have to see what happens here in free agency. We're just moments into a 52-hour negotiation window where teams can agree to terms with players' agents.
Now, we just got another update.
Oh, update.
Michael Pittman extension from Ian Rappaport. The Colts wide receiver and standout wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. are expected to finalize a deal to keep him in Indy and no longer on the franchise tag deadline, like you were saying. This deal could be done today, a major win for both sides. So he's off the board as well because he's going to the Colts.
Yeah, it makes sense on both sides. I mean, you know, for the Colts, you need offensive weapons for your own quarterback, and Pittman's he's a very tough receiver, uses his body well, so he'll stay off the market. No surprise there. Again, top of the free agent market, you're talking about names like Calvin Ridley, you're talking about names like Darnell Mooney, and then Hollywood Brown, of course. Also, you could add Gabe Davis into the mix. Now, he's a big body receiver who's the number 2 guy in Buffalo. Is somebody going to pay him like a number 1? He's a guy who can get after you in the run game as well. I don't think the Bills have the financial situation to afford him, so expect Davis to land somewhere else.
The frenzy keeps going because we're getting updates minute by minute here. Now, Bills 3-time Pro Bowl left tackle Deion Dawkins is signing a 3-year, extension with the Bills. It makes him the 4th highest paid tackle in the league. So he's staying, and that's in conference. So we're going to be seeing him.
We'll have to see it
as well.
We'll have to see the structure of the contract. My sense is that what Buffalo is doing right now with a couple of these deals, what you just mentioned with Dawkins, is that they're probably trying to free some cap space up for them in the near term. They just released a number of veterans last week. Of course, Jets fans are ready to see Deion Dawkins here in 2024. Some interesting words throughout the offseason here from the Jets left tackle. Very good player, I will say that.
He is quite the good player. Now, what do you think this... We're going to wrap up here shortly, but if you guys have any last-minute questions or comments on our YouTube, please reach out. We'll try to get to them before we're off for the day. But EA, final thoughts of just the first kind of initial moves in free agency.
Yeah, well, okay. So Zuerlein back in the house, that's huge. I mean, listen, you want to have a kicker that you can count on. And again, you're going to be scoring more points. You're going to be in close games down the stretch. He could be the difference between losing and winning. 35 of 38 last year, 26 in a row, and 5 of 6 from 50-plus yards. Hopefully the Jets can get Thomas Morstead back as well. Justin Hardy is a unrestricted free agent. The signing or the agreeing to terms with Isaiah Oliver, interesting move because he's a guy who's played, he can probably back up Michael Carter II at that slot position, but he also has versatility where he can go play outside. And for the 49ers last year, he was primarily used on special teams. But what I'm watching here, okay, so you get Zuerlein back, Chuck Clark, who was here throughout the offseason rehabbing every day. And that guy is a great culture fit here with the Jets, a veteran who is going to be really enthused to be back on the football field, career high 101 tackles with the Ravens, and he's a guy who was central command for a very good secondary for a long time with the Baltimore Ravens. Kenny Yeboah, again, a guy who can help you on special teams, provide depth at the tight end position, and then the fourth ad, of course, we mentioned Zuerlein, Chuck Clark, Isaiah Oliver, and then Yeboah. What we're going to be watching here is what happens with Bryce Huff. And then we go to the tackle position. Mekhi Becton, Dwayne Brown, and Billy Turner, all unrestricted free agents. The tackles that we're going to be watching here, Michael Wenu from New England, position flex, young guy. He's going to probably get a pretty decent-sized contract. How about Tyron Smith for the Dallas Cowboys?
A lot of questions about him.
Tyron Smith, big-time player, north of 30. Got to check out the injury history.
Right.
You know, again, we'll have to see what happens with him. Jonah Williams from Cincinnati, former first-round pick, a guy who can play right tackle and left tackle. And then also, speaking of the Patriots, Trent Brown, unrestricted free agent. But listen, when Tyron Smith is healthy,
monster.
He's one of the best left tackles in football, even at this age. Interior offensive line, let's watch what happens with Robert Hunt. We took a question about him before. Kevin Zeitler, Dalton Risner. So, again, the Jets are going to be in the market for offensive linemen. Those 3 tackles, unrestricted, Mekhi, Dwayne Brown, and Billy Turner, of course. So we'll have to see what happens. You know you got the 2 pieces. You know you got Tippmann, you know you got AVT, you know you got some depth pieces. I think ideally in the likes, when you're talking about the likes of Max Mitchell, Carter Warren, of course, and Wes Schweitzer, he's a guy who started a lot of ball games in this league.
Yep, 100%. Well, that's all we got time for today, but we'll be giving you moment-to-moment updates as quickly as we can with anything that happens in free agency. So make sure you stay close to your phone, close to your computer, and close to the Jets homepage. Keep up with our free agency tracker. That will have the most up-to-date updates for you all. But that's all from me and Eric Allen from One Jets Live at One Jets Drive. We'll catch you later.